You know an episode is about to bring the fire when Bill Maher opens the show with the crowd roaring and a dig at both Democrats and the endless spectacle of off-year elections. So what made Season 23, Episode 33 of Real Time with Bill Maher such a wild ride? Strap in, because this recap is going to break down everything from political wins and losses, legendary guests, the price of a 36 cheeseburger, to the Supreme Court being cast as democracy's last stand. Right off the bat, Bill sets the mood. Democrats just pulled off a rare win in an off-year election, finally getting a victory they desperately needed. And Maher's jokes fly, comparing Democratic excitement to the headline grab of Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl. Maher's monologue doesn't waste any time roasting the recent political climate. He calls out Gavin Newsom for pushing the controversial Prop 50, jokes about California's fiery reputation, and gets into the nitty-gritty of some unlikely winners and losers, including a cheeky nod to Nancy Pelosi finally deciding not to run and the bewildering persistence of political dinosaurs. Even Curtis Sliwa gets a mention. Half the Gen Z crowd only recognize his fire outfit, not his reputation. Dick Cheney's death follows, and Maher cuts in with his signature snark about Cheney's oil-related burial dreams and Trump's barely their condolences. But before the show dives fully into politics, Maher shifts gears to welcome his first guest, country music legend Kenny Chesney. And let's be honest, this isn't a regular music interview. Maher connects the dots between their shared humble beginnings, with Chesney revealing he started out in a place with a cooler for a coffee table, his TV propped up on dinner trays. It's relatable stuff. These two self-made guys reminiscing and trading stories about early, roach-infested apartments and rough gigs. Their common ground: no children and no regrets about it. Chesney discusses how he never felt the urge to settle down with kids, despite pressure from friends. Maher, too, echoes that sentiment. They're both driven by passion, not by family expectations. As the conversation evolves, Maher taps into something bigger: the transformation of country music itself. Chesney explains how the genre grew because artists like him soaked up all types of music as kids, from Van Halen to AC/DC, Tom Petty, and beyond. When Chesney describes how country isn't easily boxed in anymore, Maher agrees, pointing out how its pop influences blur traditional boundaries. Chesney also recounts how living in the Virgin Islands shifted his worldview, expanding his creative circle and music to connect with people outside his upbringing. There's a sense throughout their talk that music, much like America, is an evolving melting pot. Before Chesney leaves, Maher's rapid-fire exchanges dig into the oddities of country lyrics, the occasional nod to Jesus, and even the idea of a rap country duet. Chesney's open-mindedness is on display, especially when he shares unexpected creative collaborations, like working with members of Bob Marley's band, finding the honest storytelling links between reggae and country. It's a refreshing departure from pure politics, and it perfectly sets the stage for a night all about crossing boundaries. When the panel steps up, Bill O'Reilly, ever the contrarian pundit, and Florida Congressman Jared Moskowitz, They hit the ground running on the biggest recent headline, Eat the Democratic Sweep in the Elections. Maher prefaces the discussion by framing the mood of the electorate. People are sick of extremes, whether it's Biden veering too far left or Trump's chaos. Americans crave a return to normalcy, and it showed in the polls. Moskowitz and O'Reilly tag team on the frustrations of everyday voters coping with inflation, insane grocery bills, and the bizarre reality that a cheeseburger in LA can cost $36. O'Reilly laments how working Americans feel the pressure, while Moskowitz points out the irony of both parties running the same playbook, claiming the economy's great while consumers no different when they hit the store. But it's not just the economy that's fueling discontent. Maher pivots to the rise of democratic socialists like Zohran Mamdani in New York, whose transparency about being young, Muslim, and socialist is a stark departure from the days when politicians would downplay such labels. The panel weighs in on whether the shift towards socialism is genuine or just a charismatic new face for long-standing progressive frustrations. O'Reilly, not holding back, draws the line between socialism and outright communism, emphasizing the dangers of seizing the means of production. Moskowitz points out that these movements are fueled as much by social media echo chambers as by real, world economic grievances. The debate intensifies around ticket prices, sports, and entertainment. Why, if regular Americans are so stretched, are millions shelling out for Taylor Swift tickets? Maher considers the uneven effects of capitalism. For some, it's working great. For others, it's completely broken. There's real empathy for younger generations stuck with roommates into their 30s, turning toward socialism out of necessity, not dogma. The panel isn't blind to history, though, reminding viewers that every time socialism has been tried, it ended in disaster, but acknowledging the anger and frustration that push people in that direction. From the economic talk, things veer sharply into culture wars as Maher brings up the notorious Nick Fuentes and the toxic anti-Semitism bubbling up on both political fringes. The conversation is straight up, unfiltered. Moskowitz, speaking from personal experience, talks about how anti-Semitic rhetoric has infested both parties, but especially the left, thanks to unchecked social media platforms. Bill O'Reilly contrasts that with the pro-Israel stance of mainstream Republicans, arguing that the truly vile rhetoric is just a tiny, attention-seeking group trying to monetize hate. Maher points out the disturbing mainstreaming of people like Fuentes, especially when they aren't challenged in interviews, and notes how both parties now battle their own extremes. As the episode heads towards the final act, Maher plugs O'Reilly's book on evil, and the panel banners about whether Dick Cheney qualifies as truly evil, a debate that's part tongue-in-cheek, part serious reflection on how the culture's judgments shift over time. There's a callback to how quickly political perceptions evolve. Once, despised figures like Cheney and George W. Bush are suddenly desirable compared to the current circus. Then it's time for Bill's famous New Rules segment, where everything gets a little looser, a lot funnier, but never loses its edge. Maher skewers American laziness, sushi chefs greeting him with "Irasaimasu," and even the recent innovation allowing people to breathe through their rectum. Classic Maher weirdness. But he wraps up with what matters: a scorching takedown of the Supreme Court's role as a check on presidential power, especially as Trump's administration racked up an improbable winning streak at the highest court, pushing the meaning of Article 2 and the Constitution itself. Maher ends with his signature flourish, a meditation on the Constitution's current place in American life, calling out both sides for paying lip service to sacred documents without really reading or understanding them, likening it to the way most Americans treat the Bible, revered in theory, forgotten in practice. And just like that, you've been through the ringer of comedy, controversy, and deep cultural analysis. From killer one-liners to earnest conversation, Episode 33 delivered a potent snapshot of America in flux, politically, culturally, and morally. So, what did you think about this episode? Did Maher and his guests nail the shifting pulse of the country, or did they miss the mark on key issues? Were the takes on socialism, capitalism, and anti-Semitism on point, or do you have a different perspective? Drop your thoughts down below, hit like if you enjoyed the recap, share if you think your friends should see it, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives and recaps every week.